I'm Dennis Droxeth, an analyst with Enterprise Management Associates, and I lead in a lot of work we do both in consulting and research on the move to service management across IT, including within operations. Lately, we've done research on the cloud and its impact on operations from a service management perspective, user experience management, IT service management, and advanced analytics. It's really taking off in operations and more broadly across IT. As I'll mention down the road, we also did some research for the IT infrastructure library, which was acquired by Axelos, in terms of best practices for service management, all of which need to come together in your initiative. One of the reasons why moving to a service management-centric versus a siloed perspective or traditional monitored perspective for IT today is that IT really is going through a lot of change. You hear that so much, you probably think it's a cliche, you're probably sick of it. I'm kind of sick of it too, except that it's very true. I can't think of a single time within the last 30 years when I've been in technology, IT has been under pressure to transform so much, including the move to client server and away from mainframe. And that's because, in part, the pressures of cloud, to move to a more retail-oriented mindset where you're delivering value versus just managing costs, the so-called consumerization of IT, where you have to step up to increasing consumer demands. Expectations are much higher, both in quality and variety for services. And you know, you have 12-year-olds provisioning applications while they're standing in line in the movies. That's a change from where IT was in the past. No longer in the shadows, it's much more of a front office operation. Agile is another aspect. So how do you go about the move to a more service-centric environment? Well, EMA has what we call a little triangle for how to make this work. And the triangle has 3 corners to it. It sounds a lot like people, technology, and process, except people, we believe, is pervasive to all areas. So we call the third vortex in the triangle, so to speak, or angle in the triangle, we call that organization and culture. And what's interesting to me, if you look across the industry, is you've got specialists who are technology systems integrators. You have specialists who are going to teach you about processes and best practices. And you have specialists who are going to teach you about your organization that usually have fancier clothes than the rest of us, but they're all grouped in different areas. The truth is, however, they can all give you conflicting advice. So really succeeding in this game requires standing in the middle of process, organization, culture, and best practice, and making them all work together. So I've been privileged to work with CA Technologies in developing a report looking at 3 different deployments, all for Service Operations Insight, which is a wonderful combination of analytics and service modeling, integration with many different tools, CA and others, also working with a service desk and potentially working with a configuration management system or database. A real true story based on our data and our priorities of how to make this work from a technology perspective. And so I'd like to share with you a little bit of lessons I learned from each of the 3 deployments as we go through. So what did we learn from the first deployment? The first deployment was a global MSP with huge network, both internal and a lot of external networks to support customers. In this case, we're looking at problems that occurred a few years ago with that huge internal network. And the lesson learned was get the executive suite involved and leverage a failure to do it. What happened a few years ago with this deployment? There was a huge problem that impacted the global operations. Nobody could tell the CEO why or where the problem occurred and what was impacted. So the entire operation was anxious, let's put it that way. And the CEO said, this has to change. Get whatever tools you need to make this right. Well, as with many things in history, a failure in the past, a disaster can lead to real progress. And that's what happened with the operations group that brought in Service Operations Insight. And now they're building on a roll really with hundreds of stakeholders involved, strong executive support, moving towards multiple benefits. focus right now on their internal network and moving to support potentially external customer-facing networks as well. Another deployment really approached this. This was someone who came from a strong ITIL background, ITIL, the best practices for service management, into an area where things were really out of joint. And she says, you know, basically we needed to work with better levels of business alignment and operational efficiency, and these are really her words, to support business growth without increasing headcount or incurring additional IT costs. Processes were really broken. The server team didn't talk to the network team didn't talk to storage, etc. People were not trained to share information. Tool sets they had couldn't support cross-domain root cause. So it was hard to even get a temporary fix, let alone a real effective resolution to ongoing or recurring problems. And she was really brilliant in bringing in some dialogue and realigning process and expectations beyond just putting in the really strong service operations insight technology. What she gained from this, she had 60% fewer alarms, 70% reduction in trouble tickets, a 60% reduction in mean time to repair, and about a 40% more problems were now resolved by level 1. So the lesson I took away, one of the dominant lessons anyway, I took away from the third deployment that we talked to was the value, once again, of integrating operations with service desk, automated alert queues, and that really improved trouble ticket efficiencies. We've done research on IT service management. On average, we'll see that about 30% or less, really, of trouble tickets are automated through alerts, through operations. This is actually very inefficient, and integrated operations is the dominant requirement for service desk in the future based on the data we've recently have. Well, this group moved to 60%, and they're now moving to 80% of automated trouble ticket generation. That's really a fabulous step forward, and again moves them towards more of a lights-out data center where they can combine operations insights, service desk incident and problem process, and ultimately link it into a CMDB, a configuration management database, with modeling to show who owns the problem, when a change was happened to a CI or configuration item, really let you move into a fully automated environment where you can see, here's a problem, here's the owner of the problem, here's the history of the change, here's how it all comes together. Service modeling plus analytics, bringing IT together. So the real takeaways at the end here, what are the sort of the key requirements that we saw? So number one, I'll go back to that. Bring together that pan-analytic view across silos, cross-correlation with good service modeling, link it into good automation, whether it's trouble tickets or ultimately configuration automation, once you've got the visibility into where the problem lies. Find dashboards that you can share with various roles and get them excited about sharing data in a new way so they can participate in problem resolution in a new way versus 50 people on a phone call at midnight trying to figure out how they can protect their own domain versus solve the problem. And the last thing I want to emphasize, don't forget culture, don't forget process, don't forget dialogue in making this all work together if you're really moving to a service-centric operations environment.